Testing 1, 2, 3.
Stasis is perfect. Commissioner Chambers?
Test, test, test.
Perfect. Commissioner Reynolds?
Test, 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 test.
Commissioner Fuller?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Chairman Michelle?
Test.
Commissioner Lee?
Lynn, that means you gotta say there.
Commissioner Chance? Alicia? Alicia's mic is back on.
You want to give her this one?
Hey, I talk very loud. Should we go ahead and move mine to her?
Yours is actually the next lowest.
You can give her
This
that
is
one.
by far the loudest.
Check, check, check.
Check, check, check. Check, check, check.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do, Alicia, I'm gonna start over just a little bit to make sure that, we can hear everybody. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. You have the minutes in front of you, and we decided to not put them on the consent agenda and to move them to Tuesday. So, I'm gonna mention the packets. Normally, we don't get a packet this minute, do everything on, iPad, but because of the thickness of the packet and all the information that we needed, in the internet out here, it was much better to not be on the iPad and records and everything. So this is why you have a paper packet this time to take down with you. So I'm going to now turn it over to Alicia to do the financial recap 8.1.
Okay, we'll start back over on going over the budget. On the left side of your packet, you had the summary sheet that included the revenues and the proposed appropriations. We have the total revenues of $55,569,500 with the same amount of appropriations. We made the changes in agreement to the work session that we had a couple of Saturdays ago. Outside of risk management, we got our final quote on our insurance, and we're looking at about a $29,000 increase to the budget over where we were at the last work session. That increase was adjusted out of the contingency to make everything stay in balance. So the second page of that summary are the special revenue budgets for each one of those accounts. And then the next page is the revenue sheet. It shows you the changes in revenue that we discussed at the work session. The only thing that changed there were the charges for services, where we increased the amount that was being paid to the CI from the city of Carrollton for the additional correctional officer that they will be providing, that we were not able to provide in the previous fiscal year. Then attached to that is the detail line item of each revenue line, the FY20 line, the FY21 line, and the change going into the new fiscal year. And the changes are outlined on that front sheet, just in a summary format. On the right side of the binder, this deals with the proposed appropriations. The first sheet there is a summary of the total budget by expense group. So you've got the general government, the judicial, public safety, public works, health and welfare, parks and rec, housing and development, and then you've got a total. And you can see that you have totals by line item. So you get a total on your salaries, your health care, and so on and so forth, all the way down. It's on the second page. About halfway down, you've got your totals that show you the total appropriations of $55,569,500. Below that is the FY20 budget numbers and the changes for each appropriation group. And then it also shows you the total of budgeted head count for full and part-time, and it shows you the vacant positions as of March. I did not update those for current. It's a little bit difficult to do since we're still have some people that are out, like in the rec department, where we're not operating yet at this point, but those people will be back at some point. The next set breaks down each one of those appropriation groups. So the first appropriation group was general government, and then that's broken out by department for commissioner's office, elections, general admin, law, information technology, tax commissioner, tax assessor, risk management, and debt service. And then you see by department, you'll see the total head count for full and part-time, and then you'll see the vacancies there. And then attached to that is the line detail of the budget, similar to what you've seen at the work sessions, that show each line item FY20 compared to FY21 and the changes by line item for each department. Then the next appropriation group is the judicial appropriations, where we have Superior Court, Clerk of Court, District Attorney, State Court, Solicitor, Magistrate Court, Probate Court, Juvenile Court, and the Public Defender. And then you see a total by line item there on the far right. And then at the bottom you see a total by department. And then below that you'll see a comparison to the FY20 budget and the change. And then you see your full and part-time budgeted head count there, and your vacancies. And then there again, you've got your departmental support by line for each one of those departments. The next appropriation group's public safety. We've got the Sheriff Department, the Correctional Institute, the Fire Department, EMS, Coroner, 800 megahertz radio, Animal Services, and EMA. And there again, you've got the totals for each line item on the right. You've got the total for the department at the bottom compared to the FY20 numbers, and then your budgeted head count numbers. And then attached to that is the support for each department's appropriations. The next appropriation group is Public Works. We have Public Works and Solid Waste with the total by line item and then the total for each of those departments compared to the 20 budget and the head count there with their attached department breakout. Next, we have Health and Welfare. This includes the Health Department, DFACS, the Transit Program, Mental Health, CASA, and the other smaller items like Advocates for Remarkable Citizens and the Reentry Program, Partners Advancing Student Success, and the Boys and Girls Club all make up that other total amount there. The next appropriation group is Parks and Rec. We have the Recreation Department, the Parks Department, the Forestry, and the Library are all shown on this sheet with totals on the line items and totals by department with head counts there. And your departmental support for that. Next is Housing and Development with Agricultural Education, Planning and Zoning, and Economic Development. There again we have totals for the department and totals for the line items and a comparison to the 20 budget and the head counts for those departments with the departmental support for those. Then the next three sheets are individual budgets for DATE, our Special Revenue Fund DATE, which is our drug court, broken out by line item, and the next sheet is our E911 Special Revenue Fund, and the next sheet is the Solid Waste Fund. So that's a summary of all the budget information. We've been through this in pretty good detail in our work sessions, our previous work sessions. But if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to address those.
I have a question, Alicia. So on this statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance that we got a couple weeks ago for the 9 months ended March 31, it showed the balance of 10.987 million. And in our discussions here, we said, well, we should end the fiscal year on June 30 with possibly 5 million balance, plus our reserve of 2.5 months, which we were looking at somewhere around 15, 17 million balance. So I look at this one then, the current one, for the month ended April, and it shows a balance, the balance has gone down. Of course, it would because the revenues come in before the expenditures, but the balance has gone down from 10.987 to 8.5. So we've used about 2.5 million of that in a month, which is fine. But if we continue then that 2.5 million a month, we'll end with a balance of around 3 million instead of 5 million. So my question finally to you is, does this increase in the drawdown of our excess revenues, is that due to the COVID, or is this just a little bump in the road? In other words, we're ending up at a 3 million balance instead of a 5 million balance in a couple months. So
I think that is related to COVID. We totally shut the recreation and the parks department down, so we've had no revenue in those areas. And actually, in both of those areas, we refunded not all the money in rec at this point, but most of the money in rec and all of the money in parks for any reservations that we had. We went ahead and refunded all that money, so the money came back out of the budget. So a lot of that is related to COVID. Now, at this point in time in the year, you're right, the fund balance will continue to decrease because we've collected a majority of our property taxes.
Yeah.
And so our expenses are exceeding our revenues, which happens every year.
Right.
That's just how we function until we see the big increase back in November, December when we start collecting those property taxes again.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to decrease quite that much. Our sales tax is better than I expected it to be. We got our sales tax numbers yesterday, and we're down about 7% compared to last May of 2019. So it looks like sales tax is holding up pretty well, but I've seen a decrease in TABT, and then and that's not saying that people aren't buying cars. It's just with the limits on how we can service people, I think there's definitely been a slowdown in the amount of work that we can process just because people couldn't come in to the office and deal with that in person a lot of times. So I don't know if that's a real fluctuation in TABT or whether, and by what I mean by that is, so in June, will all of those people that bought cars in March and April show up to get their title and pay their TABT, and then we're going to see a big excess in June? And I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I mean, nationally, it looks like auto sales are down about 50%. So, I mean, I would think the answer to that would be no, we're not going to see an increase.
I agree with you. I don't think that we will, but, I don't work in that department and I don't see it every day, so I'm not exactly sure what we can expect.
I guess altogether then throwing out a precautionary, a yellow flag in that if we've used the excess at that rate, we're going to end up end of the fiscal year at around a $3 million balance versus a $5 million balance where we thought a few weeks ago. And so with that in mind, I mean, if that trend continues, we're using up money a little faster than we anticipated. So just a note. Oh, not yet. No.
But if the sales tax numbers stay where they were for April, and in April we were in the middle of the shutdown, we will more than make our budget next year as far as sales tax revenue. So that was positive to me. But I agree with you. There's no way to look forward 6 months and know exactly what's going to happen, in addition to the fact that there's a presidential election, which always makes things uncertain, even in more certain times. And there's just a lot of uncertainty out there right now. But I do feel like we will end up the year with a surplus, the other thing that the departments have done a good job at is that they have cut expenses. And so if we have departments like rec and parks that were not operational, they weren't going out and buying things. They cut their spending and stopped, and then their employees have gone to other departments and helped out where needed. So rather than bringing in extra help and paying them too, we've utilized their labor. So I think the situation's been managed very well up until this point, and now we're opening back up, so everybody's going back to work, with the exception of recreation for right now. But I think there's plans to have it open too.
Still on the budget? Yes, it's a good time.
Yes.
If they do, which, I mean, I think you and Susan had several discussions, if they take their money now and give raises, then, or let's say they have a vacancy. So if they take the money from that person, a salary line, and give it to everybody else, then there's no money left to pay that new person they might want to put in there. So they could, technically elected officials, department heads cannot, elected officials could take a vacancy and disperse the money out, knowing full well that this coming next year, they have to have that amount of money to pay those people, but they also need the extra money to put that person back in.
So,
But Ann probably could explain that better, or you could answer you.
With the elected officials, let's say that someone leaves the county and their salary may be much higher than someone brand new is going to be coming in. Oftentimes, they will look at that difference and distribute it among their existing employees, because a person leaving may be at a salary that would be much higher than what the job, that the annual salary would be for a brand new. So we have seen that happen over the years. So that does happen from the elected officials. Does that answer your question?
so I guess the next part of my question is, and this goes back to our conversations that we had the other Saturday. So, if someone did receive a raise during that portion, we have done yearly bonuses, I guess, in both years before I even got on board. But is anyone ever, are they excluded from being able to get that yearly bonus, or is that typically just go across the whole spectrum of county employees? Depending on the category, if they pass their probationary period or their full-time or part-time, or their stipulations, but I'm saying is it pretty much go across the board?
Over the years, usually the bonus is given to everyone based on criteria that's been chosen. What may happen is if there's a raise, there may be some people that may be excluded. For instance, let's say we give a 2% across the board. There may be some times if they've already received something that they may not get the raise, but usually all employees will receive the bonus.
So where I'm going back now, piggybacking to the conversation that we had on the Saturday work session, is whether we are going to consider giving a yearly bonus or not for FY '20, whether that conversation is happening later on down the road. I think one of the conversations was in not allowing, Commissioner Beard to have access to the 14,000 as a one-time bonus, because we were talking about whether we may be getting another bonus. I think we need to make sure that we're understanding what we're saying, and that we have in the past, through what's being explained here, other employees may have gotten a raise, or they may have gotten some additional compensation, but they were not excluded in from the yearly bonus. So the point I'm making here, while it was presented to us, I guess, from Commissioner Beard, the conversations through originally with staff and chairman, even though it was asked to be a one-time bonus, it was done in a manner of asking a manner, I guess, to basically give something to employees to pay. And so what I'm saying is there's no differentiation. If we're going to sit and say, we do not want 14,000 in the budget because we do not believe the Commissioner Beard should be giving raises to these employees, if we're going to end up possibly giving a bonus at the year end, then basically we're contradicting a normal process that I'm sure has definitely is grounded in what certain individuals would be wanted to get a raise, but we haven't excluded those people in the past. So I think on the top end of the layman's terms, it looks like we're giving tax commissioner employees a bonus, and then they're going to turn right back around and be available to have another bonus. It looks like we're giving double bonuses. The reality is there may be a check, so to speak, written twice, but it's contradictory of what other constitutional officers may do for years. It's not wrong for the board. So I just want to make sure that we're not using that as a reason to not allowing the tax commissioner to have access to those funds. I did read through the intergovernmental agreement, and I saw in there obviously where Commissioner Beard is able to get as an amount that she gets per partial for doing the additional municipalities. And I think that would be understood of why the director or elected official would do something above and beyond what we expect of the tax commissioner, Mr. Carroll County resident. I think you would want to have that information in the document. I don't stand by the fact that there's not other information in there stating Susie Q will get 50 cents or John will get 25 cents. I don't think that's something that you would expect to be in the government agreement. So my point is the lack of verbiage in there that there's not employees listed of where they would get something from that additional work. I do not think you should handicap necessarily Commissioner Beard from her ability to think that they need to do the extra work and need to receive the additional funds. So those are just some of my main points. Obviously, we're bringing in additional revenue above and beyond. We have the sheriff's department, we have the probate court, we have a lot of different departments that are bringing in revenue, and I commend them for that. But I think also when we look at the tax commissioner, they're not only necessarily processing the revenues for us, they assign the intergovernmental agreement to municipalities that they technically don't have to do, but it's bringing in substantial income to us. And so I think we need to take those things into consideration. I've been a big proponent of wanting to be fair moving forward. We're not getting this through money, and I understand that, but I think there's certain criteria for constitutional officers and different things that allow them to work within the budget. And I understand what we're doing here, and I think we need to put in the budget to allow Commissioner Beard to have access to it. But I just think the kind of process that doesn't come before the board where someone can get a raise and technically not excluded from a yearly bonus, and I don't want that to be the criteria because this was brought forward in this manner for us to find a reason based on that same criteria to exclude Commissioner Beard's employees. Because I think that we're comparing apples to oranges and making a decision. I kind of spoke all around the map there. I don't know. You know, where's all that stuff,
It
right?
sounds to me like what you're saying is to let the tax commissioner keep that $1 parcel and do with as she sees fit. Is that what you're saying?
Well, technically, that portion was negotiated in her. What I would like to see us do
$1 per parcel.
There's not.
I thought there
So
were,
$1 goes directly to the tax commissioner, and $8 goes to Carroll County.
so, yeah, that's the way I looked at it when I saw it.
Agreement was signed in 2017, for a 2-year agreement, so there's not an extra dollar. And that paperwork says $1 to tax commissioner, $8 to Carroll County.
How did the,
That's not how I saw it broke down. I'm confused.
The tax commissioner just asked for it, to my knowledge, unless.
Well, I mean, I made a mistake last year because she asked for it last year and I didn't read the agreement. I was new in my position and I didn't look at it. And when she told me that that's the way it was, then I took that and we applied it last year to office supplies, and I don't remember all the line items, but there were a couple of different line items that we applied it to last year. Last year is the only year I know that she's gotten it. But I don't.
I can't hear. Excuse me? You didn't receive that one year? No, that dollar has been put in my budget every year since I've been in office for the last 11 years.
I can't say, but
I was told that it was that way when I came in office, that I got the dollar, and the dollar was put in my budget. The extra dollar that was to the commissioners, but that dollar was put in my budget for my postage and paper and printing and what have you to print bills on. And I've always got that.
and is
So I just decided. No, I just did it a different way. I wasn't putting it in my line items for postage and all. I decided to give it to the ladies who work in my office because they don't ever, I mean, they're still on the pay scale that somebody that has been there 3 to 5 years and somebody new coming in is making the very same thing.
so,
So, what do we,
Contract is up this December, so it will be definitely renegotiated for next year. It can be rewritten as $1, $1, and $7. I mean, or it can be written however, but right now it's $1 directly to her, $8 to Carroll County.
something don't sound,
Are you asking, if you're giving her $14,000 a year?
Commissioner, can you come up here to the table so we can hear you?
So, Alicia, so her employees have got $1,000 every year.
no.
So yes, the question is right now, she has money in her account this current fiscal year. She could take $14,000 and give it to her employees. That is correct, it's in her budget. Okay, then the year-end excess, how we decide to spend it will be a separate conversation. If you want to give those same ladies another $1,000 or you don't, that's a separate conversation for today. In this budget right here, if she is under again next year, she could then again disperse her funds as she sees fit. What we're asking in this budget is to put an automatic $14,000, whether or not we're over or under next year, that her employees will get a bonus that our other employees may or may not get. That's really the question. So right now, she can technically get them all $1,000 because she's under budget. How in the June 16th meeting, y'all want to disperse another $1,000, that's a separate conversation. But in this budget, she wants $14,000 guaranteed to give her employees next year. It's not in here, so if you want it in here, you've got to put $14,000 in her line item, and take $14,000 from somewhere else.
but I'm confused, because on this sheet, Alicia, that you gave us at our last meeting, under reductions, there's the first line says tax commissioner bonuses, 15,000 reduction. So somehow it shows up as taking that away.
Yeah, out of the budget, out of the
Out of
FY
the-
2021 budget.
Out of next year's 2021
That's correct.
budget.
So I took that money out of the budget and added it in on another line item so that we could fund the 5 deputies. No. No, that money was coming out of money we had saved out of admin. Well, yeah, I mean, you could take the 8,000 out of there, that'd be,
So, but this 15,000 that shows as a reduction on this sheet, that's a reduction in the 21,
that's correct.
is a reduction from what she in practice has been getting for several years. Okay. And
In part of the conversation, I think with why I asked what I'm talking about, let's just say we have another constitutional officer that has an employee that's 65 years old and been in the county for 30 years. They're paying $50,000, maybe in this scenario. They leave that, okay? And that person is replaced with 30,000.
yeah,
Okay, there's a $20,000 surplus, if you will, sitting there. For a constitutional officer in any department, has 4 constitutional officers, technically has the power to take that $20,000 and disperse it, which is even more than what we're talking about in the court increase.
right.
And I just asked the HR director, and I understand I put you on the spot, I'm defining an exception, and the chairman, what I'm hearing is, no, technically that money was not going away from the constitutional officer. And if we gave a year-end bonus, then those people still were eligible for the bonus. So what I'm saying is here, I don't want us to play some semantics. It looks like, yes, we're going to give a bonus, and then possibly get another bonus, so we don't do that. And I understand that in layman's terms, that's what it looks like on the surface. But what I'm saying is in practice, that has been going on, not in an ill-deceitful way, it's just part of operation with 600 employees. Things are going to happen where adjustments are made, but those people have not been singled out. So it's almost like, because Commissioner Beard is being honest with us, this is exactly what I want to use it for. It looks like we're going to say, no, you're getting a double bonus for your employees, but we're not going to maintain it. All I'm saying is, arguing for it or not, we do not need to use that as a criteria to deny for the money. If we have other constitutional officers that are doing it in a different manner, and their employees are still able to get your bonus, that's the main point that I'm making, not even arguing for or against. And I'd like to see what happens in this year. But I'm not even arguing the debate, let's give it to them. I'm arguing let's don't deny it on what seems like on the surface of the double bonus, when we have in practice that happen in different manner.
Right.
As we speak.
I guess I don't want to unduly penalize the tax commissioner for being honest and saying, you know, designating this money as maybe a bonus when, as you say, in theory, the money is there anyway, and that's the way we've been doing business for several years. It seems like it's a penalty, and you bring in a lot of revenue, 200 and some thousand, the way I understand it, to the county by doing what you do anyway. So, yeah.
So what's the next step? Do we need to make a change in the budget? Do we need to vote on something? What do we need to do?
If we're gonna do it for
We
20,
can't vote today, so if someone wants to make a budget amendment on Tuesday to put the $14,000 back in, but at the same time, you make the motion to where you want to take the $14,000 out, we vote on it, if it passes, fine, if it doesn't, somebody can entertain another motion.
But I guess if we work on, we would need to work with the services, do we want to ask if there's a way to consensus today, at least put some more options
We've done 7 hours worth of this budget, you know where the money is, so you just gotta decide where you feel that the 14,000 will be cut. Various departments or all from one department, that is just a decision that you all have to come to on Tuesday. Each one of you throws out a different idea, that's great, whichever one passes before all of our votes, will be how we'll do it.
I'll be glad to work with you. I mean, I just, you know, I've worked through the budget and tried to do the best that I could to accommodate as many things as we can, and we've cut other departments, and, you know, I'll be glad to work with you in any way I can.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you all for having me today. On behalf of Jason Lanier, much appreciated. Can everyone hear me okay?
Barely.
Good. Everybody should have 3 sets of documents. I'm assuming that was made available to you all. If I can, I'd like to pedal through those 3 sets. I'm just a high.
Well, let me back up just a second. So you're with J. Smith Lanier?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
J. Smith Lanier, we handle all the placement for the property and casualty insurance, risk management services for the county. So your property liability, E&O for you guys, law enforcement, legal liability, automobile, crime, property, you name it. It's basically everything other than workers' compensation and health insurance benefits.
I don't see anything.
business session tab will be the last dealing statement we get.
Then I go to the financial session, I just have the general fund, and then I go straight to business session of appointments.
Historical claims, and, yes, so,
Looks like this.
look, right before the business session tab.
Be the last thing before the business session tab. It's about 4 or 5 pages or so statement.
Oh, it's in. Yeah, in there, there you go.
Find it. Find it, Steve.
I was looking in the wrong place. I don't know what to do.
There you go. You're close. Pull that section out. There you go. See, it says covered somewhere. There you go. Huh? I just thumbed through till I found it. So.
Good to go?
You might want to talk a little bit loud because of the roar of the air conditioning and the traffic out there. The microphones are for the public listening in and for the recording. They're
Okay.
not- They don't really record us to each other.
Got it. I can talk loud. If anybody can't hear me, just let me know. And not to give you a whole lot of sales speak, but on, for the benefit of Commissioner Reynolds and Commissioner Fuller, we're a local, we've got an office here in Carrollton, Georgia. Bobby Stewart and I, we've handled the county's, Bobby's been involved with the county's insurance for decades, and so anything from the P&C side we've handled for you guys for a long time. My apologies for not addressing that. I just take for granted that we kind of know who we are, so my apologies. Everybody have these documents? So 2 of these are going to outline the premium and exposures that the county has. And if I can hit those first, and then I'd like to move to the loss ratio. And just real quick before we get started, you're going to see some premiums laid out here. They're going to be more than what they were last year. I just ask you to consider that those premiums are based on exposures, in which most cases are up from where they were last year. And then the other factor involved in that is loss ratio, which we do have a little bit of a temperature. So, if I'm sitting in your chair and I'm looking at these premiums without looking at the loss ratio, I've got some pretty hard questions. So the document, Carroll County Board of Commissioners, July 1, 2020 to July 1, 2020 estimated insurance premium summary. There's going to be 2 documents there. The difference in those documents are different deductible options that are going to be outlined on a separate page. These premiums to roll through here are going to include property, equipment breakdown, your commercial general liability, employment benefits plan liability, law enforcement liability, umbrella, public officials liability, and EPLI, employment practices liability, commercial auto, crime, terrorism, and then we have Chubb that writes a portion of the county's property. Your estimated premium for last year was $696,000 and change. This year, the proposed premium with similar deductibles is $794,000. In an effort to bring those numbers down, look on, Commissioner Chance, look at, there's another page behind it. In a goal to bring those numbers down and working with the carriers to a little bit more palatable number compared to where we were last year, we got them to propose an option that's got some higher deductibles that are going to be outlined on these 2 pages. And either one of those options are bindable options.
I got a question for you on this sheet.
Okay?
Where it shows deductibles, so, basically our premium's going up 100,000, our deductibles are doubling, tripling, and quadrupling in some cases from 10,000 to 25,000 on the property, from 5,000 to 25,000 on, the bottom third of the page there. So it looks like we're getting a lot more liability exposure. And it looks like the biggest increase is general liability. The expiring premium is $280,000, and the proposed is $610,000. Is that right?
Well, all of those lines are included. If you refer, Commissioner Reynolds, to this sheet.
No, I mean, is our general liability premium going from $280 to $610?
No, not just your general liability. If you look below that where you have public officials, errors and omissions, employment practices liability, where you see included,
I'm looking on this sheet.
Yes, sir.
On the expiring premium column, under general liability, it says 280,000.
yes, sir.
Right next to it, it says 609,816, so 610,000
Yes, sir.
as a proposed premium.
Yes, sir.
So that's increasing our general liability premium from 280 to 610?
The way State National does it, they include your public officials E&O, your employment practices liability, and your law enforcement liability all in that premium. So if you just glance down below that, where you see included, I know it says next to general liability, this is not our document, it's how they present it to us, which is why we kind of create this other document. All of those roll up to those premiums.
Okay, so it's 280 plus 302.
So where are you seeing the
So
three?
on the left-hand column, expiring premium, there's 280,000 under general liability. If you go on down to automobile liability, it's 302,000.
Correct.
If you go on down to excess liability, 13,800. So,
Correct.
so do I add those three together?
Really, what you do, if you go all the way to the bottom, the way State National does it, they may move premium from one bucket to the other bucket where they can afford to be more aggressive depending on where your loss ratios end up. You're looking at 696 versus 720 from State National. That's the numbers that I would ask you to pay attention to. Correct, Commissioner Chance, no argument, you do. Which is why if you look at the higher deductible option, that's the $720,000 option, in my professional opinion, I do not recommend that. It may be a decision that you want to do, but if you look at your claims history, which we're going to dig into a moment, history is going to tell us. If you think about your losses, most of y'all are involved in business in some type or have been, if you look at your losses as your cost of goods, your cost of goods, which is your losses, continue to go up, so your premiums go up, and they're forcing your deductibles up as well. If
Do
that
we have
makes-
losses last year of over 100,000?
Yes, sir.
How much more?
Yeah, if you refer to this document, and this is going to spell it all out, but if you look at, okay. HVAC type systems, if there is correct, like if you have a piece of equipment that you have an artificially generated current that just goes down. Yeah, don't think about it as a wear and tear, but if it's an artificially generated current, a surge, correct. It's not. Don't confuse it with insurance. Will not. It's not a wear and tear type item. Yeah. But on the property portion of it is the one area that the county has performed extremely well. I mean, you can look at there's zero loss ratio. For the last 5 years and current year. Where we're really having a temperature, if we're referring to that document, is the auto. And we're in the third year, without even looking at this loss rate, this loss summary, we're in the third year of a hardening auto market, where if you had a 0% loss ratio on your auto, I would likely still be talking to you about an increase. Unfortunately, we don't have a 0% loss ratio. We have had our fair share of accidents. So that's the part, if there's anything we can do for you where we need to get it under control, that's where it is. So when you may see some premiums drop, which again, to your point, Commissioner Reynolds, you could see some coverage lines drop, but they're going to load that into the auto because that's where they need premium. The good thing is we have one carrier on everything other than the property, so they can move money around. But at the end of the day, we're sitting on an 80% loss ratio, and once you move past 60% is considered a temperature. We need to get that loss ratio below 60%, and if you carve out the property lines that are with Chubb, that loss ratio moves to about 85%. And we're committed to do whatever we need to do from a loss control. So we place your insurance, right? But we also offer part of our service platform. You know, we bring our engineers in to help train your drivers. And it's, again, there's no additional invoice the county's going to receive. I'm going to strongly, you know, urge you to take advantage of those, some of those services. We've done it in the past, and they do work. You know, we've got a temperature, and it's you know, we don't want to come in here and present to you increases every year. You know, we want you to look at it and say, okay, this is what we're doing, and we want to be trending the other direction. In some of these lines of coverage, you've got some large losses 3, 4, and 5 years back that are going to be coming off. But those are, unfortunately, where we are in the auto market now. You're seeing your auto increase, which is the one line where we really need to improve, because you've got two hard lines. That's the property and the auto. Property's great, auto's not. And that's what's driving the increase.
So to dissect the auto, are we having more claims on our side where there's liability on our side, meaning our drivers fall, or is it mainly driven for just the property damage and the actual cost of the job?
Great question. It's both. Your auto liability loss ratio, if you just look at the liability, which is a third party, the damage we do to other people or their vehicles, is 80%. Your auto phys dam is sitting at 110%. Now that 110 is inflated. There was, you know, the third and fourth year back, we had 2 fire trucks, both of which, I mean, that was $825,000 between the 2 trucks. Those are large pops, so when you roll a truck or you can't scratch a fire truck without having some serious damage to it, right? So that's a big portion of those. Those will roll off, but the way carriers look at it, they're going to look at a 5-year loss pick again, because they know the first year is going to be green because those losses haven't developed. Like, we've got open claims from several years ago that are still in litigation that they're still fighting, and some of those reserves have moved up. If you want my opinion on what's driving that, legal climate in Georgia is a big part of it. You've got more technology in the cab, cell phones, GPS systems in the cars that are leading to distracted drivers. You've got younger drivers. There's up until COVID-19, there's a huge stretch on your qualified workforce, especially drivers. I mean, ask any of your transportation firms. You know, we insure a lot of them, and it's a stretch. So finding the qualified people to put behind the wheel, it's hard. So a lot of times you're having to put younger people that are less qualified. So you take those 3, and it's just turned into a perfect storm. I mean, not to bore you, get too far in the weeds, but you know, the state of Georgia, you know, in 2019 made the judicial hellhole list. That's not my language, that's somebody else's, you know, across the country. And Georgia's never been on that before to my knowledge. And we made it in 2019 as number 6. So it's just where we are in the legal climate, those claims continue to go up. And we have carriers that will not write commercial auto in the state of Georgia anymore, that have literally pulled out of anything transportation related, which is not good. You know, we need more competition to drive those numbers down.
We've not taken advantage before of these driver classes that they offer. They do it for free as part of their service. So we're already in discussion about how we're going to plan them for fire, or we're going to plan them for generally any employee that when they drive their own car, they can then learn, they can save on their own insurance. But we're going to start putting those classes in through our safety committee and maybe we're going to do our wellness program. So this is something they offer, we're just not taking advantage of it before.
And we're happy to do it. It's, you know, so when you think about us as insurance placement, which is a big part of what we do, you know, risk management services is the whole other end of it. It makes my job easier if you've got favorable loss history, because I've got people in line, you know, wanting to provide coverage. So the more we do from the loss control engineering standpoint, the easier it is when we go to market for you on an annual basis. And not to give you too much sales speak on that, but if you take care of this sheet with the loss ratios, this sheet essentially takes care of itself. Now, you can't do anything about where the overall auto is in the state of Georgia. You know, people ask me when that market's going to soften back up and come back down, and I advise them strongly to talk to their legislator at the state level and voice their opinion on where we are within the legal climate, because it's tough.
We have 2 choices here. Which one did you put today?
At least we agree.
We did that because we wanted to have a better,
Lower deductible.
right, that's what I'm thinking, you don't know how many car wrecks you're gonna have next year. If we did the same, took the same wrecks we have this year with a higher deductible, we don't have enough money in this budget to cover that. So we're having to go with the higher cost and the lower deductibles. That's how, isn't that how we decided to,
Yes.
that's how we chose this one in the budget, because if we had the same amount of wrecks, we wouldn't be able to afford the second option.
Our deductibles would have eaten up the savings in premium and some. So our budget probably would have increased if we would have estimated, if we had the same number of losses going forward that we've experienced in the past, then the increase in the deductible would have more than eaten up the savings in premium. So at the end of the day, this is probably still
More conservative.
yeah.
So the goal is not to have as many as we had last year, so we will begin to work on that. But there again, we wanted to make sure we did not budget something we don't think we can make. So that's why we went with this option based on our past history and our loss ratio. So hopefully we move to lower that loss ratio.
And when we look at trends a lot. If you look at your number of claims, on the auto side specifically, it jumps around a little bit, but you're down this year on the liability side, but last year you had your highest year on both the auto, phys dam, and the liability. So if those are going to trend down and your claims are favorable, we may look at that, because you got a $74,000 pickup in your annual commitment on the premium side if you take the higher deductible. But if you looked at where your losses have been, where they're trending, Alicia's exactly right. You're gonna pay more in deductibles than that $74,000 you would have saved.
So Alicia, when you put this into the budget, because we had a different number, obviously, when we met last Saturday, and it's higher now today, where did you take the money out? What line did you take it out to for business risk management?
Contingency.
Contingency. So how much is our contingency line going forward for next year? I can tell you, it's $13,800.
Okay.
If we did have 170, going forward, we have $13,800.
And which one got in the budget again? The 720, you said?
No, it's 794.
794.
Because
Correct.
if you did the math with the 720,
Yeah.
based on the history, we would be needing more money in the budget,
Than
even
the
though this is a
difference.
higher dollar amount.
So if you give me some amount, so I understand from the consumer standpoint, the insurance is different, obviously, probably on less than what you're doing. You're not technically insured, right? You're sending this out, you got to be
Correct.
but, you've seen in the last few years, there used to be a real value in people.
Mm-hmm.
An example of that is Verizon Wireless. I've been with Verizon since they were best out for 15 years. And I was paying more for an unlimited plan than someone to come right off the street. And so, we're going to get the same cell service, the same customer service, no difference that I've been doing for 15 years with paying this high monthly fee, right?
Yep.
No difference. So I'm not asking this you to say, oh, this is mission flex, and then you come down, or we're going to switch and go somewhere else. But what would you say from a loyalty standpoint you're providing to us versus if we said, you know what, we're going to go bid this out, we're going to go another direction, let's see if somebody will come in. And you may say, hey, yeah, they'll give you about 50,000, but the reality is not going to use the same customer service. So I'm trying to put a value on what it is to be loyal to you, your company.
Yes, sir.
Versus why would we not just keep switching? And I understand what you're saying, that your claims continue to fall. I get that. There's also incentives out there for companies to say, hey, I want to count business, or I want this company business. So without going into a 30-minute spill, can you give me an idea of why you say, hey, you need to stay with me. This is what I'm doing for you. This will be the downfall of the customer switch and someone can go to bid about $50,000.
Certainly, and great point, great question. If I can answer it in two parts, I would. So if if you consider the service platform of J. Smith Lanier, and J. Smith Lanier is now, 3 years ago, for whatever it's worth, we purchased, however you want to dress that up, with a company called Marsh. J. Smith Lanier was the largest privately held broker in the Southeast, right? We were partnered with the largest brokerage firm in the world. Now, the blessing is that they have left us alone. We still operate within, the local arenas in which we live and work without too much oversight, but we do have access to a global pool. So if we had a client that opened up an office in Singapore, we could insure that, if that makes sense. Now, specifically to the county, that service platform, from claims advocacy to loss control services, is what's going to break down and mean something to you. Most of your brokerage firms are not large enough. Like, we've got a dozen engineers. Some of them are going to specialize in environmental, some of them are going to specialize in fleet safety, some are going to be liability related, premises liability. But what we'll look at is where the claims are, and we're going to pull in the appropriate person, which in the county's case before, it's been a gentleman named Michael Govar. Phenomenal what he does with fleets. A really, really bright person. So we're able to kind of dispatch those resources whenever necessary. And not that we're the only, I don't want to paint the picture we're the only brokerage firm that has that. There's some other large firms out there that employ those people. I'm partial though. We're local. If there's ever been a request for that service, we've obviously filled it. Now, the second point to that, from if you were to bring somebody else in, which certainly have the right to do, but the way the insurance world works, again, being as large as we are, we've got access. I'm not going to say, Commissioner Chance, that we have access to every market out there, but we've got most of them. So don't ever think that we just go to a State National or just go to a Travelers. We send you out to a number of other markets, whenever we deem necessary, to get competitive bids. So let's just say you brought an ABC brokerage firm, along with J. Smith Lanier. We're both going to go to State National, right? We're both going to go to Travelers. We both may go to Wright Special Risk, but the first one in with that submission is who they're going to quote for. If you compare it to health insurance companies will quote for any broker that makes that submission. On the property and casualty side, it's just the way our industry works. It's the first one that builds that submission and puts it out there. So there's not anything, I would argue, that, unless there was a firm that came to you and said, hey, we've got exclusive access to this program. As a taxpayer of Carroll County, I would appreciate the call, and if we don't have access to that and it's going to be advantageous for the county, you're going to get hey, do it. And I'm not saying we want to lose your business by any means, but we're going to fight to keep it. But then, on loyalty, if you look at State National, we've been with them since 2016. 2 years, or you take last year and the year before, they were both borderline whether they were going to offer renewal. We do write a tremendous amount of business with them. We do have a lot of leverage. We were able to get renewal terms when, the loss ratio, when we were, when you look at the FISDAM accidents that we were having on some of those fire trucks, we were able to leverage that and offer renewal terms, right? So a big part of what we do is first make sure we have renewal terms, right? Because carriers do have the option to non-renew if they're losing money. So as soon as we have those renewal terms, then our next objective is, okay, push those down as far as we can before they tell us they're willing to walk away, right? So I hope that answers your question. Yes, sir. So the umbrella policy you probably referred to, it's blanket limits on the property. So for the record, I would tell you always insure each building for what the replacement cost value is, right? But as we don't expect all of our clients to know exactly what it's going to cost to replace a building. It would be great if we all did, but I'm going to say the majority of the people we do business with, they're going to say, hey, that's plenty to rebuild a building. And I guess I've had the unfortunate opportunity to be involved in several very large property claims, 8-figure property claims. The ones I've been involved in, we're all underinsured when we have documentation that the insured felt like they would be more than adequately insured, right? So it's just, it costs more to build. When you look at process piping, you look at monorails, you look at trench systems within facilities, all those start to add up. But what you have is blanket limits. So if you're, 10% short on one building, to whatever that number may be, you're working off a total limit rather than individual limit. So whenever we have a client that's got multiple locations, our goal is to blanket that together and limit any type of co-insurance clause that we can. You bet.
I got a few questions. So you said whenever you deemed it feasible, you would ask State National or ask the other companies for comparisons. When was the last time you did that?
We actually went to Travelers this year. So Travelers and a company called QBE. QBE was high to the tune of about $40,000 on the lines that they quoted. Travelers, I'm going to say, stopped short of giving us any verbal indications of where the premium was going to be. There's some dam inspections that we need updated, but without updated dam inspections, I think the most recent ones we have on file are from 2017 or 2018. They're not willing to provide a quote without we've got 4 dams, Class 1 dams, and without engineering reports on those that have been updated. Would they have come in any more aggressive than State National? Maybe. It would have likely been a pretty close match. We write a lot of business with Travelers as well, and they're taking a very hard approach. They have lost a lot of money on commercial auto the last 3 years. And they would have likely provided a proposal, but the auto would have not likely been any prettier than what we're with State National. And if something's close, and I'm going to say within single percentage points, we're usually, unless there's some service issues, we're usually going to advise you to stay the course with who you are, and we are going to do whatever we can to push them down to close that gap. So we did go this year, to answer your question.
Okay. So you're satisfied that you don't offer any other lines that would be a substantial savings?
Correct. Commissioner Reynolds, it's a great question. I am confident that what we put together is advantageous. And I'll always argue that there's anything out there that can always get beat if you look hard enough. But we've been pedaling pretty hard to pull this together, and we don't like delivering the increase that you're looking at any more than you like seeing it.
So if we take advantage of your training programs,
Not yet, we are.
okay. So when we take advantage of your training programs, how soon will we realize and what amount of monetary benefit will we get from that?
A great question. If you look at that law summary specifically on the auto line, and I can actually put this in a bar graph is how I like to do it visually, and you start seeing it go the other way. The first year you have favorable loss experience, it's going to be noticed, but a lot of people are going to say, okay, and I don't like using the word luck in insurance, but the underwriters are going to look at that and say, okay, is that just luck? So we're going to try to back that up and say, okay, no, it's not just luck. Michael Govar came out and he met with, the fire department on this day, EMS on this day. We've structured, all of these meetings to substantiate why. So if it just comes down with no reason why, it doesn't matter near as much as if you can put your finger on it and say, okay, this is why your premiums have escalated down. We'll even look at something new for the first time, and a good underwriter is going to look at that and say, okay, we understand it's gotten better, but tell me how or tell me why. So I would tell you first year is going to get a positive look, but the more that trends, to the down, it's going to start to pay dividends. And I say that conservatively just because I know where the auto market is now. I've got accounts that have got very favorable loss ratios that have been taking advantage of our services that are still seeing increases on the auto just because where the overall market is. You're taking more of that hit because you've you've had negative results, right? But it's you know, I'm not trying to, you know, shoot myself in the foot either, but it's just, I want to, you know, managing expectations. It's a tough auto market right now. And there's argument whether COVID-19, you know, there's no doubt in the last 60 days that there's been less accidents on the road, without a doubt. You know, whether that's going to have any positive effect, if it'll last long enough, but, you know, people are back on the road for the most part. Not fully, but people are moving more than they were 3 weeks ago. But there will be, you know, there's going to be a 2 or 3 month span there where we're fairly certain that accidents are going to be down.
So I know several companies, the one I'm with included, is going to give some benefit for a couple, 3 months. Do you do that type of thing also because of decreased travel and that kind of thing?
For COVID-19 related?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Carriers, we've got some that are deferring payments, not making them go away, but just deferring. If there's been a big drop in your exposures, i.e. Revenues, which isn't really different here, you know, we're changing those exposures midterm. If we've got a fleet of vehicles that is parked because they're not moving product from point A to point B, we're trying to disengage those vehicles. Say you have a fleet of 500 trucks.
I guess I understand all that, but I guess I'm for quicker answers.
Okay.
So with COVID-19, just like my insurance company says, hey, we're going to reduce your premium 15% because of 2 months worth of, and it'll amount to about $100 or whatever. Are you going to do that type of thing for Carroll County?
Correct, and it would not be J. Smith Lanier, it would be State National. State National has not put anything out there. Travelers has not put anything out there. The only place I've seen that on the commercial side is on medical malpractice. You know, a lot is where they've said, okay, but that's going to be in 2021 and 2022. They're not going to offer those discounts this year because they don't have a full realm on what kind of effect it's going to have on practice. But
so unlike what I'm seeing in other markets, your answer is no. There will be no likely cut in premiums.
No likely cut, and I will ask the question. Sorry for the long answer.
Right. When is, Alicia, and I'm new, so I feel like I'd like to know this. When was the last time that we bid this out? I know Dave Knight, he lives on Hall Road, about a mile from me, but, so when is the last time that we bid this out? Because there are other, I would imagine, local insurance carriers as well. So have we been with J. Smith Lanier a long time, or when have we?
To my knowledge, we have been with J. Smith a long time, but we did include another broker 2 years ago. So there was another broker that actually quoted their companies that they could get quotes from, and we were significantly less by staying with J. Smith Lanier.
Do we have a process so that, I mean, periodically we would bid this out? I mean, this is a big thing and a big expense. So I'm just wondering if every 3 years or on some periodic schedule we say, hey, here's our business. If you want it, give us a bid. I mean, do we do that?
We haven't done that on a periodic basis. I think every 3 years is probably about an appropriate amount of time, and I would like to be able to get an RFP written by next year early enough. You have to give them time to look at all the numbers and put everything together. You can't get a quote like this in 5 days.
Right.
There's a lot of work that goes in. There's a whole package of information that has to go to them for them to do their quote. So, I think if we're going to quote it, we would need an RFP ready by the end of January to give everybody adequate time to process that information.
Yeah.
Ernie, I think sometimes too, you have to look at, are we desirable? Is this something that somebody would want to bid on? So I think, yes, you probably have to do a periodic check, but if you have paperwork that does not look good, you probably don't want to go to market.
I'm for a local company. Yeah.
Well, I'll also throw this out too. Not every company can back up a county government. I know that from our personal business, not everybody can insure oil, the business we're in, so we have a limited market of going out to market for it. So I believe the county government, we're very lucky we have someone who is local, that is not in Atlanta, that cannot come out and see us any time that we want to see them. So in that case, there's something really to be said for local, and we're very lucky we have someone who can represent and go to market for us.
Well, I'm for staying local. I'm just saying there could be other local insurers as well. So it would be, yeah. Yeah.
I did have another question. I know a lot of work, terrorism insurance came about, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I actually had to sign something. You don't want a policy, you have to sign saying you understand that terrorism happens with the coverage. I see that's included, but as we continue possibly enforcement circumstances that we see around the nation with looting and rioting, is that specifically under crime or terrorism included? I just want to make sure that there's no facet of something that could happen that technically is not in the category of something like terrorism.
Commissioner Chance, I wish I could tell you you're covered for anything and everything, but in regards to terrorism, it is built into the cover, and it's a certified act of terrorism from the federal government, which would be a little bit different. I mean, if you look at what's going on in another part of the country right now than riot. But both of those circumstances would be contemplated in the coverage presented. And there are certain times where you may want to exclude terrorism depending on what the premium is, where it doesn't meet the common sense test necessarily if you're not something that a terrorist is going to be interested in. But yes, it's in there.
What deductibles did we end up going with? The same as the expiring deductible? Okay.
Yes, if we stay with the $794,000 premium, then we will stay at the same deductible level we're currently at.
Okay.
Very similar. Close.
Okay, if there's no other questions, what I would like is, do y'all want to put the 8.3, consideration of FY 2021 liability risk management insurance proposal as presented with the lower deductibles, higher price on the consent agenda for Tuesday night?
I'm all right with it.
Is there anybody that does not want to put that on their Tuesday night?
I guess my only hesitation, I feel like we've got a relationship and president to the taxpayer, but we don't think we're reasonable. I mean, we're trying to do our jobs like you do your job on your today. I guess my only concern is we're making a decision when we consider not in the moment of just seeing. I think if we had it to see or review, I would hate for an item to come up with that question that I'm not saying you should bring it off and send it in before we vote on it, but that would be my only hesitation. We're going to deal with it, see when we ask a lot of questions.
So I guess my question is, if you decide you don't like option 1, option 2, we have to pull some other things out of the budget, correct? Or we just gamble that we are not going to have.
Well, we've already picked a higher price on our end, so that would have to give us revenue, correct?
Well, if we went with the lower deductible, then that would give us some contingency money or some damage settlement money to add to a line item. My concern is that it wouldn't give us enough, and at the end of next year, we would be looking at having to have a budget amendment to increase that line item because we haven't put enough money into it.
So I guess that's my question. Do y'all want to think about option 1 and option 2? And that's why you want to wait till Tuesday, or is it just?
I don't technically have a problem, I really don't. I just
He just wants to take the legal